and we've got a fantastic session, and I'm so excited to be able to stand here and bring you these amazing executives. They have worked a lot behind the scenes on these sessions, and I think you can see that in the way they execute them with flawlessness. I think that's been a hallmark of every session, and it's due to the executives that are putting them together, working hard, rehearsing them, and now bringing them to you live. So just want to have a huge call out to our virtual audience. We're super excited to have you join us. And I also wanted to have a reminder for everybody that all of these sessions are being recorded. They're being streamed live to our virtual audience, but they also are all available the next day. So if you had to take a call or had to step out, or you're in a different time zone that maybe the time zone for virtual people is not syncing with our time zone here on Pacific, you can see all the sessions tomorrow, and they're going to stay live on the app for up to 30 days. So coming up after this session, we're going to award some prizes, so make sure you're here. But to start on time, I want you all to just join me in giving a huge round of applause to the lady that put this session together, Fotini, Petroula, Sales, and Operations for IBM. She is spectacular. Not only did she bring a great crowd in person, but I know there's about 70 people from IBM around the world watching this, so make sure you give her a huge thank you. Join me in welcoming her.
Amy, I think, yeah, it works. Thank you, Amy. Good afternoon, everyone. Almost good evening, I would say. So we understand that we are the last session of the day, so we'll try to keep it as interesting for you as possible. And may I say good afternoon, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to people in the virtual world, and thank you for joining us. As Amy said, we are going to have the sessions live for 30 days. So we are discussing decision rights and what are the trade-offs in each company. We have been living unprecedented disruption and continuous headwinds in our supply chains for almost the beginning of this decade. So we have entered a decade of disruption, and as we are looking in each company, no matter the industry, we see the many changes that they had to make, both on the way they are deciding what are the priorities from a tactical but also strategic perspective. We have contemplated a lot amongst this team regarding decision rights and organizational models, and whether both are part of the same discussion. Clearly they are. One is interrelated with the other, and that's how we are going to approach this subject. We are going to hear, and I will be asking them in a little bit to introduce themselves. We have here executives from many industries, and we are going to be hearing their perspective, but we also going to be here from academia, research from universities, and we have with us Dr. Mike Knemeyer, who is going to be giving us an insight starting from the academic world. So Mike, over to you.
Thank you very much, Fotini. Glad to be here. I have to be honest, I heard about this session early on in the planning, and I'm teaching a course at Ohio State in supply chain decision making upcoming this fall, and I said, what a better way to get prepared for that class than to spend some time with some great subject matter experts at the SCLA. So I appreciate you including me on this. My job is to tee this up and then get out of the way. I will let you know that I will be looking at my phone. It's not because I'm not interested in what's being said, but I'm there for the online crowd to make sure I'm looking at those questions so that I can feed those questions to the panel at the end. So when you think about decision rights and you think about it from an academic perspective, one of the things we are constantly focusing in on is, who's making these decisions, what decisions need to be made, and how should those decisions be looked at. So as I'm teaching this course in the fall, we're going to be talking a lot about decision rights. We're going to be talking about decision biases and the assumptions like we talked about earlier today during the opening session. As part of the level setting, what I thought I would do is take a look at a poll question here. And to give you a sort of set the stage for the poll question, we've got 4 levels of maturity. And what's been shown in these levels of maturity around design is there's a design, it connects into your strategy, connects into your operating models around decision rights. The lower levels of maturity tend to do sort of more myopic, more internally focused, more ad hoc, not a lot of structure to it. You get to that second level, you start to become a little bit more, you start to realize that there's an external environment that you need to be thinking about when you make your decisions. You start to bring in more structure, a little bit more adaptability to decisions. You get to that third level, you've gotten it figured out. You understand that there's an external environment that should be influencing your decision making. You're making that alignment across the structure, the strategy, and the operating model to drive decision rights. You get to that high level, that's where you've really got that external focus, you've got really tight alignment, there's rigorous, and most importantly, there's some learning going on. So if you had to look at your organizations, I'm going to push this here, hopefully I did this right. How would you characterize your level of maturity? And we'll give it a few seconds here to sort of see where the group stands. And then I'll tell you a little bit about, there's been a wide a survey of this across a lot of companies. Those that perform higher on this maturity level tend to be more innovative, tend to have higher levels of revenue growth, tend to have more employee engagement. Lots of great things come out of this maturity. And I'm sure the subject matter experts will talk about their level of maturity and how to influence the moving from one level to the next. So let's take a quick look here. Want to put it up? Okay. So it looks like most of you are in that functional and emerging category. I see a lot of myopic, level 1, systematic analytical, 3rd, expansive co-creative is 4th. Very consistent with what the broader surveys say. Typically, for level 1, you're looking at about 30% of the companies. Level 2, 35% of the companies. Level 3, about 30%. And that top level, only 5%. So we still have a lot to go in this, and bringing some structure to decision rights could be very beneficial in a lot of ways. With that, I've teed it up. I'll hand it off to you, Fotini.
Thank you.
Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Mike. So we'll ask our panel to introduce themselves. Also, when you talk about the company you are representing, if you give us a little bit of what would people recognize your company for, and also how would you answer this question? Kate?
Okay, thanks, Fotini. Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Gerdes. I'm the head of the ISC Strategy, Business Continuity, and Resilience teams at Philips. Philips is a healthcare technology company based in the Netherlands. We have over 70,000 employees globally. Some of the products that you may be familiar with, we make a broad range. It could be anything from an electric toothbrush to razors to ultrasound machines, CT scanners, and MRIs. So it is a vast portfolio, but our purpose is to really focus on improving the health and well-being of people through innovation. I would say, where are we on this scale? I would rank Philips a 2 moving to a 3. And I see us moving to a 3 due to the new organizational design that we're implementing, as well as the construct to really bring down those barriers and encourage more cross-collaboration.
Hello, everyone. Drake Bailey from Ferguson, Director of Integrated Supply and Demand Planning. Ferguson is a North American distributor of HVAC, appliance, plumbing, and other products. We carry over 1 million products, so a lot of different products to a lot of different customers. We have upstream around 37,000 suppliers. Really complex network, so carry a lot of inventory, so I'll frame my response kind of to the last session around inventory. Looking at the maturity of Ferguson, I would say we're at a 3. Ferguson, very analytical mindset, deep use of data across the company on really a single data set, and I would say a simple, cohesive approach to inventory decision-making. So I would say Ferguson is at a 3 at this point. Not a 4, but a 3.
Yeah, good afternoon. I'm David Null. I lead customer experience and supply chain for one of the segments at Georgia Pacific. Georgia Pacific's a large forest products company. We have 3 segments. You're probably best known for our tissue towel, Dixie products, so Golden Northern, Angel Soft, Dixie, Dixie plates, cups. But we have 2 other segments. So one is building products, and a third is packaging and cellulose. That's a segment that I reside in. We're part of Koch Industries. Koch Industries, you may know something about. We're about a $125 billion company. Some of the other companies in Koch are Invista, Molex, actually Infor, who's here, Flint Hills Resources. In terms of the maturity assessment, I'd also say we're probably about a 3. I think we have the vision, culture, organizational design, or operating model that would support a 4. But I think in terms of training, execution, I think probably brings us back a little bit. So I'd say we're probably more of a 3 level.
Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Curtis Ijames. I am the Director of Demand Planning and Inventory Management at IBM. IBM is a technology and consulting company overall, right, that specializes in providing AI and hybrid cloud solutions to our enterprise clients. Within the supply chain, we support all the hardware shipments for all of our mainframes, power servers, storage products, appliances globally across the world. So make the assessment, I would say that we're between a 3 and a 4 from a supply chain in our maturity. For many years, we continue to look at how we drive decisions across the business. And I think we're at a healthy spot right now where we're also looking at how we implement that through automation, right, to get decisions made faster.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's move to the first question for you guys. So, David, how are decision rights managed at your company?
Yeah, as I mentioned, part of Koch Industries, so we have a very strong business philosophy we call principle-based management. And principle-based management is really a holistic approach to decision-making, problem-solving, and value creation. One of the aspects of that is we believe in comparative advantage in terms of decision-making. So in other words, we really believe in pushing decisions to those folks on our team that have the best knowledge. We really try to push decision rights down in our organization. Another aspect of that, though, is we really encourage a lot of collaboration. We encourage a strong challenge process. In our culture, we're actually expected to challenge if we don't believe the right decisions being made. Now we sort of work towards consensus, but we're by no means a democracy. So we don't always agree on all the decisions, but we try to approach it that way. Another aspect of our approach is decision rights are earned in our company. So they reside with an individual. They don't necessarily reside with a role. So you can have different people in the same roles, and they could have different decision rights. So there's a lot of communication between a supervisor and a leader and the individuals, and probably basically as an employee advances, throughout a role or through their career, their decision rights would grow. Yeah, I guess one other thing, though, some of the more important decisions, so like large capital expenditures, large commercial decisions, contracts, that kind of thing. We do have the traditional authority matrices that we utilize.
Thank you. Kate?
Sure, thanks, Fotini. Well, at Philips, we've been on a transformational journey. We are moving from functional organized decision-making to just 3 years ago, we created our first integrated supply chain. So that was a huge step for us to start bringing people together and start collaborating. It did create, questions on now who gets to make decisions and looking at things more end to end. But that's where we're at now on evolving the journey. We're really shifting to more end-to-end thinking and creating and aligning ourselves by end-to-end value streams by business. So the model that we're moving forward with, I would say, is a hybrid model of decentralization by business with the supply chain embedded in each of those businesses. However, we're still going to maintain a small layer of centralization for centers of excellence. And those centers of excellence will support each of those teams, whether they're doing strategy or IT, large project type of coordination. So they will have that, central support. Each ISC leader will be aligned to the business that they support, and they will be end-to-end responsible for all of their results as well as their transformation. So that shift is really empowering them to kind of build bottom-up plans that are aligned and prioritized to that individual business. And we think that that's going to have a dramatic impact on how we get things done, the speed at which we're making decisions, and really the impact that it's going to have within each of those individual businesses. So we're really excited. We're not fully implemented and deployed yet. That should be done over the next couple of months. But we're already seeing more cross collaboration, and people are excited about this new model and this shift that every business can kind of start having the right conversations that are important to them. And so excited to see how our hybrid model plays out.
Thank you, Kate. How has defining decision rights in your organization led to changes in your supply chain's operating model? And David, this is for you. I mean, you talked about almost a value system with your comparative advantage. So there is a value system in decision making. And then, of course, Kate talked about a hybrid model. So how well this is balancing in your operating model? David, for you.
Yeah, one of the recent changes we made, so we're putting a new system in place, and traditionally, in one of my businesses that's under me, we've managed our inventory with our customer service team. And there were reasons for that. The customer service team was close to the customers, pretty much understood the customer needs, worked very closely with the sales team. We didn't have formal segmentation, but we had probably sort of an informal segmentation. These customer service reps really understood the supply chains. But it came with certain drawbacks with that. We didn't have great systems in place with the technology transformation we're going through now. We'll put some better systems in place, and we have about 50 of these customer service reps. So it didn't really make sense to try to train 50 customer service reps on this new technology, and particularly as we try to standardize practices and tighten up our inventory policies. So we changed the operating model. So now we'll have an inventory planner in each region. They'll still work very closely with the customer service team as well as production planning, commercial team, logistics teams, et cetera. But a total change in the operating model as we try to transform.
Thank you. And Kate?
Yeah, we have a great example that really started as a result of a COVID response effort. And that's how do we evaluate and manage the supply risk that we have in our supply chain? And I'm sure many of you have that problem as well. But what we learned during that response effort has really become a global program and a standard way of working now. So we are looking at our product portfolio and prioritizing which products are the most important. So it gets back to that prioritization of your portfolio and not treating every product one size fits all anymore, and running after supply for every product, even though it might, have the lowest return. So we're really looking at how do we protect the top line revenue and impact to the business from supply. So taking those high risk components and de-risking them. Our procurement teams, are traditionally, they're focused on the bottom line and taking costs out. But with the alignment and collaboration now with the business, we are seeing conscious decisions and efforts where procurement is actually protecting our top line revenue. So we are collaborating more end to end. I mean, we'll have meetings with procurement and manufacturing and R&D to say, these are the highest risk components for this product. What strategies are we going to deploy to take care of it? Are we going to accept the risk? Are we going to monitor the risk or address it? And we're no longer just functionally one group mitigating, thinking they're mitigating a risk and unintentionally creating a new risk. Okay, we're starting to see the interdependencies between all of our decisions and consciously making, going in eyes wide open and making those decisions together. So that has been a major change for us that we've seen. We have, in 2022, we already mitigated 700 high-risk components that were in our product set, and we have a roadmap to do over 1,500 more this year alone. So it's helped us get a common lens to communicate and to prioritize which projects we're actually going to support, invest in, and go after.
Thank you. It sounds like almost like a clearing system, balancing these decisions with the various risk categories. Moving on to the integration and how well, Gerdes, how well do you believe that your supply chain is integrated with the rest of the business? I mean, David and Kate talked about connectedness. So what do you
No, good question. So first, I'll just say, living through the last 2 to 3 years, right, with COVID, with the semiconductor supply shortages, it's required us to go back and relook at how we drive our management system, right? So not just within the supply chain, but also the interlocks that we're having with the cross-functional organizations, right? Whether it's supply shortages, whether it was increased inventory, or even the cost to square up supply, right? Everything was becoming, increasing, and it was having a bigger business impact across the brand. So one of the things that we looked at and when we, talked about our interlocks was, how do we ensure we get the maximum impact as we go through this? So we looked at it in 3 phases. The first was harmonization. How do we, ensure that we have alignment? It's not just supply chain, it's finance, it's sales, it's product management within the brands, that we have alignment on when key decisions need to be made upstream. And with that, we ended up ensuring that from a cadence standpoint, we were all interlocked on what some of these new variables were that was impacting the brand's overall bottom line, and then what was the data that we would need to go address that. The second phase of that, though, became transparency, which is, how do you make the data visible? When you think about a large enterprise corporation with multiple stakeholders, one of the things you have is silos, across that space. And for us, it was important for us to bring data in because, as supply chain, we have a lot of data, but bring in relevant data that kind of described, what was the changes that was occurring, across the environment, right? Whether it was inventory or whatever. But what that actually allowed is it allowed the transparency and allowed the trust of, why we're having these conversations. The third element is really an ongoing process, right? And that's where you're driving automation, and that's where you're looking to. We created a digital twin So that gave us the capability of bringing data from multiple sources into one portal, and then be able to share that portal not just within the supply chain, but upstream to other functional areas, right? So that drove kind of the trusted element and then the connected element through processes. We'll continue to work on driving automation so that we're embedding AI on top of that. But that's how we kind of ensure that the issues we saw from a supply chain standpoint during the semiconductor constraints were integrated across all functional areas to ensure that we had, as minimal impact as possible to the bottom line.
And Drake.
Yeah, so from an end-to-end perspective, we've been on a journey for the last few years, even before COVID, on connecting, and Curtis mentioned the data, right? Upstream all the way to our vendors. They're hungry for information, right? Purchase plans, how much are we going to place? Certainly in the demand surge we talked about in the last session. So we've started sharing plans with them at the SKU level out 6 to 8 months, right? And collaborating with them on that data. We've also set up a vendor portal for them to self-serve information. So from that perspective, they've been very happy with the data sharing effort. Internally, we've been looking to modernize our technology further. So upgrading our planning solution to a cloud solution, taking advantage of that machine learning capability that's growing, so that we can also work in the fulfillment planning space more within our network. And then downstream, we go to market with customer groups, 9 customer groups. Traditionally, we planned at the item location level, so we want to get further down to the customer level. Our top customers have a demand plan for them, be able to hopefully in the future reserve inventory for them so that we have a true end-to-end plan from customer group all the way back to the manufacturing floor. So it's really been about data for us.
Thank you. I mean, we've seen it. I can definitely attest to the connectedness. Why, at the end of the day, the result of it all is speed. I heard it in other sessions earlier. Speed is the differentiator. I think even this morning it was mentioned in the opening session. Dr. Bolotto talked about it, why we need to make sense of things quickly. The more data, the more information you have in your system, end to end, the more, let's say, educated decision you can make in order either to ensure you spend less for your company or you provide services to your client quicker, or when the client is requesting that. Moving on to the challenges. So what were the things that worked well? And what were the challenges you found when you all went to assess your models and the way you're making decisions? And I will start with you, David.
Yeah, I think some of the things that work well in our approach. So one, I think we really push decision-making down to the levels that have the best knowledge, but at the same time, I think we do have a culture that really encourages a lot of participation. I think for our employees, there's a lot of value. I think it provides a lot of fulfillment to our employees. We treat decision rights more or less like property rights. It's something to be earned, something to be, have a lot of pride in, I would say. I think it benefits in our employees' development and their self-actualization. That's important to us. And our approach encourages teamwork. I think some of the challenges, at times I think we can be slower than what we'd like. I think sometimes we run into issues, what we call tragedy of the commons, sometimes where decisions may fall or decision rights may fall between different groups, or maybe multiple groups feel like they have, they should be involved in a decision or even have the decision rights. Awarding decision rights or having decision rights aligned with comparative advantage also has a certain amount of fluidity to it. So as people change roles, as employees leave or you have new employees come on or employees progress through their careers, then their decision rights need to be changing. So to some extent, our decision rights are always a little bit in a state of flux. And then I think the last thing, sort of associated with that, as we try to push decision rights down, it's really important, the role of the supervisor is really important in that. And one thing to think about, many of our younger supervisors, they progressed because they were very good at making decisions. They were individual contributors, made good decisions. Now as they progress, they need to learn to pass those decision rights down to their employees. And I don't know that they're always comfortable with that. So that's an area we work a lot on. We work, a lot on just the role of supervisor in general, but particularly in regards to decision rights.
Thank you. And Gerdes.
Yeah, let me start. I think probably the biggest, Michael? Okay. I think the biggest challenge for us really was the education that was required in our silo organizations, right? Supply chain became very, very big in 2021 and 2022. So being able to drive not only a higher interlock, right, but describe scenarios where, our other organizations could help us by taking down SKUs, things of that nature. It took some time to build momentum, right, of how to help ourselves. So that was a big challenge for us up front. However, I do think the education went well. And then the second thing I'd say, though, as far as the benefit, was overall the adoption for digital tools. I think it was spoken in the previous session, right? Became an opportunity to not only showcase some of the work that we'd already done by, consolidating our data flows, right? But also extending that capability out to other functional areas so they had some similar visibility. So that was a big positive in our journey.
Thank you. And fluidity is quite important, but there is a difference between the theory and execution, of course, of things you're doing. You have to be fluid, but at the same time, people very well be confused when you go at a speed potentially that they cannot accept these changes. And I think Eva and Tijuan mentioned in the earlier session about change management, how thoughtful you need to be to go about performing these changes. And Drake, what does the future hold on decision making? What do you think?
I don't have the crystal ball, but I would say that for us, I talked about the customer voice. Specific to our case, we're going to continue down that path of trying to separate the decision framework where it makes the most sense. Our model has changed from really a location-based inventory decision to who can make the best decision about the inventory. For example, our business is about projects, making the contractor's project a success, and that means reserving inventory for them, right, and having the right dates for when they need that inventory. So we've pushed, that's a large section of inventory, we've pushed that to the commercial team, and they have the decision space there. And supply chain really has the rest of the product, which majority of the product that's available to purchase, where we can layer in multi-echelon plans and try to place the product at the best location for them. So our model is evolving closer and closer to the customer, and where it makes sense, we'll relinquish that decision so that we have the inventory ready for their project and make it a success. So I would say for us, it's certainly getting closer to the customer voice.
Thank you. Kate?
So the area I see changing the most in the future is our corporate culture and standard ways of working. I think that there are 3 key ingredients to success in the future, and that would be that culture of collaboration. Hopefully the siloed dinosaurs of making decisions without talking to anyone to your left or to your right are gone. If they're not, you should have those conversations, because I think that's something we all should have learned from the last 3 years. The next element is really having that enterprise mindset, thinking outside of the box, thinking along the chain rather than just in your area. And that means beyond supply chain. I mean, there are so many areas that we touch or that touch and impact us. Think about R&D and your product design. Think about, your financial decisions of where your factories are going to be. I mean, there are so many different other elements outside of supply chain that we need to get involved in and have, impact and influence on. And the third area is trust. It all starts there. I think that, making a conscious effort to move away from functionally oriented metrics and KPIs and go more towards shared metrics and customer-centric metrics. I think that that's something that we're all learning, is listening to the voice of our customer. What do they need? What do they need from us? And I think that those three elements that I shared with you are critical to enable that. You mentioned, David, that you have a really good structure to make decisions in your organization. It's a little bit fluid. There are always going to be decisions that come up that you didn't plan for. And so it's a guide, it's an approach, but you need to be resilient and be able to respond. There is no perfect RACI out there for all of us to say, okay, this is how we do it. We need to be able to respond with speed, like you mentioned, Fotini. We did it in the pandemic. Those that were able to make quick decisions and respond quick to the market and what our clients needed were successful. And so now that we're back in more normal times, we shouldn't slow down our decision-making process just because we're not under the pandemic. So those are some of the biggest changes and lessons that I see coming in the future.
Thank you very much. What it has been apparent from our discussion is we have various industries represented here. There is not one solution which is good for everybody at all times. Of course, there are certain things we all do that we know very well how to do, but there is a place at the time, and I think that's what the COVID period showed us. However, these elements that became apparent from the conversation, from insights from the team, is how connected we need to be, how end-to-end we need to be in our approach. Supply chain is not a silo. And I think the very important word that I will keep from Kate's closing, and the closing this morning, again, I will borrow from Dr. Bolotto, is culture. So all these changes required a specific way of managing and creating that culture. And we are all leaders in this room, so what is very important is we need to walk the talk. The very last statement that Dr. Bolotto left us with. We all need to continue being open, and we all need to continue to be managing our business in an open, with a growth mindset, and seeking continuously the feedback of our people. We won't always agree, for sure, but it is essential to get their buy-in and for all of us collectively to create a culture that we want in our companies for these changes to take place. So with that, Mike, we have had a lot of questions, I think, coming our way, right?
Run a little Q&A session here. We have some questions from the online audience, and we might start off with one of those to get the ball rolling, but we'd welcome questions from the audience also. So if you have a question, let me see your hand at some point. Maybe start off with one. I love the reference to decision rights being equated to property rights. One thing that came up in the online chat room was that during COVID, we did some land grab. We got a little bit more property. We got a little bit more involvement in decisions. The question is, are we going to maintain that involvement? Are we going to be part of those people that we consult on some decisions that maybe were outside of our purview earlier, before COVID? Any thoughts on that one?
I can start. I was just reading the question. I would say that in our case, we certainly gained ground, right, on the surface. We're a plumbing distribution company, but underneath, you really saw the power of the supply chain. And I think it keeps evolving our decision space as we go forward. We've been building on that. I don't think there's been any steps back. So in our case specifically, I think we showed how much we play into the value of the company and we keep evolving. There's no necessarily decision right stepping backwards coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah, no, I would second that. I mean, just given the management structure and things that nature's been put in place, I see that being something that's a mainstay, at least in the short horizon, right? You never know what's around the corner for what the next changes would be, but it took us a while to get to where we are. But I do think our GMs see the benefit of having supply chain at the table and giving their full view of what impacts are around the corner.
Okay. Anybody else?
From my perspective, I think the supply chain has always been a really important part of our company, and we've had very close alignment with our business leaders. I mentioned that I'm responsible for customer experience as well as supply chain. We put those two together because we felt like supply chain had such an importance to our customers' satisfaction, our customers' experience, and we do a lot of voice of the customer work, and in supply chain always, we generally score well, but we generally also see opportunities, but we also see how important it is when we do those surveys. So some ways I feel like we've always had some seat. It came up in an executive discussion we had earlier today too, and I had a thought. I mean, to me, it's around value creation. If the more you get a seat when you're creating value for the company, or in the case of the pandemic, there was risk of potentially destroying some value. But in either case, it's I think proportionate to the value creation that the capability provides to the business. So.
Yep, and I would say at Philips it's similar. I mean, there's a whole new appreciation for the impact and importance of the supply chain. So yes, we have a seat at the table. We have acknowledgement that, hey, we may not have listened and paid attention to you guys, for the last few years, and we've underinvested in you. So we actually got a special, investment as part of our strategy this year that we need to do more to make the supply chain more robust and resilient because it was underinvested. But I agree with the point of you can maintain that seat at the table as long as you're having impact and influence. So we need to continue to keep bringing the right, propositions to the table, bringing the right solutions to the table that will help the enterprise. We just went through an exercise where we sat down and said, from business continuity standpoint, what are the top risks that the supply chain introduces for the enterprise? And how do we mitigate those? We're not going to solve them all, but how do we start making step functions to get better? And so just that commitment there of having that discussion with our top executives as to what can the supply chain be doing to better insulate the enterprise, I thought was a huge shift that we're seeing. So I think it's here to stay as long as we, bring the goods to the table.
Great. I have a couple more questions from the online audience. Does anybody in the audience would like to ask the question before I go to another one? Going once? Okay. Let me ask you one. I got a couple more, but let me ask you this one first. One of the online audience members said, pushing out decision making, pushing it down where the work is going on. From a research perspective, that's what we teach our students to do. That's going to be a more mature approach to it. You're going to get closer to the customer, closer to the action. The question online is there a concern about that? Are there some downfalls or some negatives to doing that? Any response to that?
Maybe I can start that answer. As with everything, it is a balance. You cannot, the higher you go in the organization, your whole, the whole environment you're dealing with, it's more obviously at the top level and how to, to avoid risk at a very top level. However, you need to listen to your experts because you are going to be missing a lot of things. Even if you are a subject matter expert who started from the bottom of the organization all the way up, and I see it myself, it doesn't matter. You will still miss a lot of the day-to-day and a lot of insight that, given everything else that is going on at your level, you can make the connectedness for for the team. So I think it is a balance. You will not always agree with your people. You will not always have, let's say, their blessing necessarily to what you're doing, but you can have this two-way discussion and the two-way feedback that is imperative, particularly when it comes to implementing at implementation level.
Okay. We maybe get one more perspective on that one?
Yeah, I have some thoughts on it. So, by pushing it down, they may have the best knowledge, but they don't have complete knowledge. And that's one reason we, really encourage collaboration, teamwork. Actually, many times, we may feel like we have the right to make a decision, but we'll still check with our boss, or, even our boss will check with their boss, right? And so there are many aspects that may not be considered. Maybe a legal aspect or a compliance aspect or sort of a reputational piece of it. And, there's things that just come with experience, right? You've lived through some cycles, so you understand that maybe some of the lower level employees, less mature, younger, probably haven't lived through cycles, so they don't have some of the same experience. So we still encourage, bouncing ideas or the thoughts of, sort of up through the organization. And I think each of the leaders, sort of make their own decisions, how much they want to sort of escalate, the decision. Well, it's not so much decision making as it's more, asking for help or asking for guidance. So.
Great. Thanks. One last chance from the audience. No one wants? Okay, I have my final question, and we started off the session talking about the maturity assessment. Each of you provided an assessment of where you thought your companies stood, and nobody was at the top of the scale. What are the couple of things that you would say your company needs to do to move up the scale to a higher level?
Yeah, so I guess from my end, right, it's continued the evolution of digitalization and being able to drive client feedback in naturally, right? I mean, we do have our programs, our client set programs, but somehow a better way of driving client feedback that impacts more the day-to-day versus the high-level feedback that we get.
I would add technology in there because we talked about talent in the morning. That is a scarce resource. So we want artificial intelligence, automation to be doing the mundane items. And we need thinkers. We need the people who will make the difference, who will see the dots being joined. I think that's imperative. Client, absolutely. That we are paid from our clients. It's that simple. And technology, in order to be getting our best thought leaders into getting us prepared constantly on a daily basis, back to the speed we talked about earlier.
That perspective came out in our peer group this morning, that the technology is not going to be a replacement for decision making.
Oh yeah, absolutely not. Yeah.
What about the rest of you?
I'll go next. For us, I would say the next evolution would be continuing the journey of bringing the supply chain data together. It's still very fragmented. We need to have that end-to-end view, and then the transparency that everyone can see it and use it to help communicate to our clients and customers. That would be one, and along that would be some level of integrated planning system. I think that would be a tremendous help for us. We don't have a good view of end-tier supplier and an ability to collaborate there. So those would be the two big system shifts that I would see to take us to the next level.
Great, thanks for that.
Yeah, adding on to Kate and point you made earlier, right? So technology for us, right? Advanced planning system, twin, right? Getting that framework in place to serve up the decisions from a technology point of view really would take us to the next level. I think the other is the learning loop, right? So what do we learn from the last decision? We're all about speed, right? We want to take care of the customer right now, fix the problem, and that bleeds into all our decision making. So I think taking the time to go back on a decision and make sure we learn from it and bring it back into the next decision, I think would be a helpful step.
And that learning loop's that fourth level, that highest level, right, that we see that.
Yeah, as I sort of said in the opening remarks, I mean, I think our company has the vision, the culture, and, you know, largely the organization in place to help us. But I think some of the challenges are, you know, one around training, you know, just continually, you know, learning more how to make decisions, or helping our team, or, you know, our younger employees learn to make decisions. I think that's just a constant process. And then another thing, I mean, like everybody, you know, we look at people, process, technology, you know, making advancements on the technology piece, but I think the tendency to overlook or not put enough emphasis on the process side of it. So I think that's an area that I think me and my leaders are trying to work a lot on. A lot of the processes are a bit in our heads, and so as we get change of people, then a piece of the process goes with them, and so I think we need to do better at documenting processes. You know, we've moved towards more of a capability model to standardize processes more, so I think that's helpful. But I think you can't overemphasize the importance of process.
Wonderful. I really appreciate you guys deciding to include me on this so I can be ready for my class in the autumn. Fotini, I'll let you close it up.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much. And we saw, you know, when we had calls as prep, I was looking for you to give us this guidance. So you helped us and me tremendously. So I really, really do appreciate it. And I want to thank each of our panelists today. It's easy to say, you know, be open, be vulnerable, but when you truly are, you really bring the perspective that you see in your companies. You're all representing some big names here, and you know, being real, it's what makes the sessions very valuable. So thank you. And I would say we are all driving. We are rather not driving, I would say, for perfection. We are driving for excellence. So that's the best we all can do for ourselves, our own personal development, the development of our people, and again, going back to the culture that we want to maintain moving forward. So thank you all very much. You being with us. And now you can all enjoy your drinks. Thank you.
Okay, just some housekeeping notes here to wrap up the day. First of all, I'd like to thank our moderators today, Misty, Nick, Heidi, Steffen, and Fotini, and Michael. So let's give them a hand. Nice job. I would also like to acknowledge our peer group leaders. If you could stand up if you lead a peer group. Thank you very much. And finally, I would like to reiterate that a lot of the innovation that's packed into these sessions and really the program overall is enabled by our sponsors. So again, I would like to acknowledge our sponsors, KPMG for the app, the SCWA Lunch Sponsor Intelligent Audit, and then Project 44, who is sponsoring the Circle of Excellence and Distinguished Service Award Dinner and Reception. So let's give those folks a hand. As Fotini mentioned, it's on to the end of the day reception and then Circle of Excellence Award dinner this evening. So thank you very much for everyone's time and attention today, and look forward to a great evening and a great day tomorrow. Thank you.